At various points throughout Yandere Simulator's development, I've discussed whether or not the game would benefit from the addition of a small town. There are numerous practical reasons why a small town could potentially improve the game. However, creating such a large environment would significantly extend the game's development time, and that's something I would prefer to avoid. So I eventually arrived at the conclusion that, instead of building an entire town, it would be much more pragmatic to simply add a single street that serves most of the same purposes. A few days ago, I received the assets required to build a single street in Yandere Simulator, so I could find out if the concept works as well as I'd hoped. In this video, I'll show you Yandere Simulator's new street, and I'll explain what kind of functionality it might provide in the future. You can access the street from Yandere-chan's home. Because you have to go to school during the day, you can only visit the street at night. However, in the final game, you will be able to visit the street during the weekend, so it is possible to see it during the daytime. For now, you can press the spacebar to instantly toggle between night and day. The street currently contains 8 locations: a hardware store, a manga store, a maid cafe, a hair salon, a ramen restaurant, a music store, a convenience store, a video game store, and an electronics store. When you enter a store, you see a portrait of the shopkeeper who operates it. For example, in the convenience store, you see a cashier. If you don't press any buttons for a while, she gets bored of waiting for you and starts messing around on her phone. Currently, this cashier is the only shopkeeper portrait I have, but in a future update, every store will have a unique shopkeeper. Ideally, every store will also have a unique interface that suits the theme of the store, similarly to what can be seen in the Persona games. The hardware store was inspired by a situation that I frequently encounter in the Hitman games. I'll explain. In some of the Hitman games, you can choose what equipment to bring with you on your next mission. You can bring guns, poison, bombs, but you don't have the option of bringing certain everyday items. Simple objects like screwdrivers are often essential to complete a task in Hitman, but running around the entire map, wasting a bunch of time looking for a screwdriver, is extremely annoying. I always thought it was weird that I'm allowed to bring shotguns, assault rifles, and sniper rifles, but I'm not allowed to bring a simple screwdriver to save myself some time. It would make sense if Yandere-chan was allowed to bring certain household items from home to school. At the start of the game, her home would probably already have several common items, like a pair of scissors, a box cutter, a screwdriver, etc. But if the player disposes of these items at school, or destroys certain one-of-a-kind items at school, they should have a way to replace the items that were lost. The hardware store would sell some of these items, and would also provide cool weapons that can't normally be found at school. For a long time, Yandere-chan has been able to increase her stats by reading manga at home. I didn't know how to make manga available to the player, so I just put books on the ground around school. The purpose of the manga store is to finally provide the player with a more logical way to acquire manga. The maid cafe simply allows Yandere-chan to access her part-time job as a waitress, which is how she earns the money to afford all of the products I'm talking about in this video. This is currently the only way for Yandere-chan to earn money, but now that there is much more emphasis on purchasing things with money, perhaps Yandere-chan will be given alternate ways to earn money in the future. Until now, the player has been able to change their hair at any time by pressing the H key on the keyboard. This is fine for a debug sandbox, but it wouldn't be appropriate for a finished game. In the final game, the hair salon is where Yandere-chan would go to change her hairstyle or dye her hair. Like in most games with character customization, there would be an actual interface for it, instead of just pressing one key on a keyboard. You've probably noticed that the exterior of the building looks more like a barber shop than a hair salon. In the future, many of these building models will probably be updated, so don't worry about their current appearance too much. the street also has a ramen restaurant. This restaurant could be just for decoration, but it's also possible that perhaps it could serve some sort of practical purpose for the player. Maybe you could listen to people gossip as they eat ramen and learn gameplay tips. Or you might overhear critical information about your current rival. Next to the ramen restaurant is a dark alleyway where... Hey, have I seen that guy before? Nah, I think I'm just imagining it. Anyway, the next building is a music store. In the old days, some video games had a sound test screen, where you could listen to any music from the game's soundtrack. The concept of the music store is to let the player unlock tracks from Yandere Sim's soundtrack that you can listen to on a music player in Yandere-chan's room. This might have been a cool idea in the 90s, but these days, people just look up video game music on YouTube. So this feature might not be very appealing. It's entirely possible that, in the future, the music store will be replaced with something completely different that has a more meaningful benefit for the player. The convenience store sells items like cigarettes, alcohol, and condoms, which can be put inside of your rival's book bag to frame them for bad behavior. Because Yandere-chan is a high school student, she can't normally purchase these kinds of products. In order to gain access to these items, you will first have to obtain a fake ID from InfoChan. Yandere-chan has a video game console in her home where it's possible to play mini-games, but there has never been an interface for obtaining these games. The game store exists to provide that interface. Maybe in the future it'll be possible to play Super Yandere 64, Yandere Tale, Midori Forest, or Yandere Simulator in Yandere-chan's home by purchasing them from the game store. The final store is the electronics store. This is where Yandere-chan might be able to purchase useful technology, like the camera and tripod used to film a kidnapped victim in her basement. It could also provide Yandere-chan with devices that can cause distractions. I don't want to bring up Hitman every 5 seconds, but in Hitman, the most useful gameplay mechanic is the ability to throw a coin to direct attention away from yourself. Without this mechanic, the game would be far more tedious and far less enjoyable. Yandere Simulator does not have a comparable mechanic. You can create a distraction by giggling or turning on a radio, but this attracts attention to your current location rather than directing attention elsewhere. I don't want to give Yandere-chan the ability to throw coins, because I want Yandere Simulator to be different from Hitman in as many ways as possible. A reasonable alternative might be giving Yandere-chan the ability to purchase a device that can be activated with a remote control, such as a radio. Being able to activate a radio remotely would finally give Yandere-chan the ability to direct attention away from herself, which would permit the kind of stealth gameplay that I want Yandere Sim to have. It's better than just putting bushes everywhere, right? Anyway, that's the sort of thing that the electronics store could provide. I can think of at least one other way that a street could improve gameplay. This student, Kokuna Haruka, goes on dates with older men in exchange for money. In Japan, this is called enjo kosai, which means compensated dating. If you want to expose Kokuna's dirty secret, you only need to eavesdrop on a phone call where she discusses enjo kosai, and then gossip about it online. But perhaps the player should be required to actually catch her in the act of enjo kosai, and take a picture of her with an older man in order to gain the ability to spread rumors about her. That's another potential use for a street in Yandere Simulator, spying on your rivals and gathering evidence that can damage their reputations. This concludes the tour of the street in its current form. It's possible that it will change drastically in future builds, based on feedback from players. It's kind of an experiment, or prototype, right now. Let me know what you think of the street, and your suggestions might shape the game in the future. In case you're curious about Osana and Raibaru, I've been making steady progress. I've been working on the last remaining content required for Osana to be complete. Her suitor, Raibaru's weaknesses, her befriend-betray elimination method, and the events necessary for getting her expelled from school. However, I have also been dedicating a lot of time to fixing anything that looks janky or buggy, and making sure that Osana's events are as polished as possible. I know that probably isn't super exciting to hear about, but trust me, it's going to improve the overall experience a lot. Speaking of Osana and Raibaru, there's actually something I'd like to share with you. As you know, characters react to corpses differently depending on their persona. Cowards react by running away, teachers' pets tell teachers, etc. Raibaru's reaction to seeing a corpse is to run to Osana, tell her that the school is not safe, and then run away with her. Recently, I accidentally killed Osana right next to Raibaru, without Raibaru noticing. That's not supposed to be possible, but that's beside the point. When Raibaru discovered Osana's corpse, she said, "Oh my god, is that a dead body?" Then she said, "I need to find Osana and get out of here." Then she ran up to Osana's corpse and said, "Osana, something horrible has happened. We need to get someplace safe and call the police." Then she started running away, taking Osana's corpse with her. This is exactly the sort of thing that I'm taking care of right now. It might be funny to look at, but I definitely don't want anything like this to occur when Osana is officially released. That's why I'm spending a lot of time double-checking and triple-checking every possible set of circumstances and fixing every bug I can find. That covers everything I wanted to say in this video. Thank you for your patience, and thank you for following the development of Yandere Simulator.